Welcome back to The Trade. I'm Gina Beck.
This is Drew Williams.
Thank you for listening, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I appreciate y'all. It really means a lot, especially the reviews on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, thank you guys. And like I always say, thank you for the continued support. I love seeing all the names all the time. I love seeing hashtag banana cats. Cracks me up.
So, how are you?
I'm good. I'm, surviving another day of the coronavirus. So.
Right. Quarantine.
Yeah. It's weird. There's like hardly anybody out on the road and stuff like that.
With us living where we live, we're still able to do these podcasts because we just use these online services. And it sucks for other podcasts that don't have that, but maybe they're going to be doing it just before this. That'd be cool to see.
I mean, it's really not a bad way to get around, get contact.
Yeah.
I mean, and not infecting your co-host and things like that. But we got some dark topics today to talk about.
We do.
We'll just
two
get
of
into
them.
Two of them. We'll just talk about what it is. We're talking about serial rapists, and I wanted to start off with talking about Robert Bruce. Robert Bruce was later found out to be the ether rapist. I forget how many victims he had, but his wife was basically the reason why he ended up getting turned in. He was caught being a peeping Tom, and his wife basically connected all of the dates from the other rapes and when he lived there. And what he would do was he would use a rag soaked in chloroform, and they thought it was ether at the time, and knock these women out, and he would videotape a lot of these crimes on top of it. And if you no, keep going. I'm sorry.
I just wanted. You said you weren't sure how many he did.
Yeah.
He had confessed to a dozen sex crimes in that Norman area.
Yeah.
What he confessed to.
Yeah, it's really creepy if you listen to some of his interviews with the FBI. He straight up, I mean, he takes no accountability for what he did. He says along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, all these things could have been prevented if the parents would have taught these girls simple things like lock their bedroom door. It's a shame they sent them out in the world like this. Just total sociopath. But he also did this to his own wife. He would drug her and video and tape, and she found, like in a horror movie, she found the tape and realized the monster he was, probably then, really. He had children, and he's described always as wearing a very normal mask. He apparently was a good father. Wasn't a very good husband, but it goes to show you that most of these crazy people don't look like your stereotypical rapist or pedophile.
They never do, right? Oh, majority of the ones that I have, saw, even just like from what other people have caught and stuff like that, it's usually even like the ones that wear suit and tie, like those, they just never look like someone that you would think would want to hurt a woman or a child, but they definitely like have the goal to. But also, he was targeting single women,
college girls,
mostly
college girls, almost specifically.
Mm-hmm. And he would also break or unscrew the porch light so they wouldn't see him. And eventually his DNA was entered into a national database where investigators learned that he had also been convicted of a window peeping charge in Colorado.
Yeah, one of the articles I read, it's actually how they got to his DNA. Her name was Joylyn Martinez. Joy noticed that the timeline of sexual crimes tied with the movements of her husband, the rapes in Albuquerque, had started when Bruce had moved to the area and ended when he had left. She knew he was in Austin, Texas for work on the night of the rape that occurred in 2006. And the
Mm.
rapes basically spread across Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, Colorado. And it was her bringing this attention to the police. They were able to get a warrant to get his DNA.
So altogether, he was sentenced to
64
how
years.
many?
64 years plus a
64?
following 333 years. So he's in
Wow.
prison for life.
It was on 5 counts of first-degree rape,
Yes.
10 counts of first-degree burglary,
Yeah.
3 counts of sexual battery, and 1 count of forcible sodomy for the attacks in Norman. That is so scary.
Yeah, and if you guys look him up, I mean,
You just gotta.
he's really normal looking. Like, and that's the scariest thing about it. I mean, we'll link another documentary too, with Joy, and she talks about living with this man, and he really went to great lengths to like hide this other side of him.
And he looks like, yeah, he looks like someone that'd be like your typical uncle. You know, he just looks to me like he looks like my kind of like my uncle, but a little chubbier. Like just a typical dad. That's the scary thing
He
too.
totally could be anybody's neighbor. I mean, that's really what he looks like.
Yeah. And we all, is that all for Robert?
I mean, it's not. I mean, that's all we could cover right now. People could dig into him more. His acts are horrendous. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about each one, but he's a serial rapist.
Yeah, the documentary is definitely worth watching, and we'll link it in the description for sure. But we also want to talk about Peter Norris Dupas. I didn't want to say the last name wrong, so I had to look up how to say it. But it's Dupas. There's also a very good documentary on him as well, which we'll link below. But he is an Australian serial killer currently serving 3 life sentences without parole for murder and for being a serious habitual offender. He has a very significant criminal history involving serious sexual and violent offenses, with his violent criminal history spanning more than 3 decades, and with every release from prison has been known to commit further crimes. That's why I don't get that they just let them go. You know what I mean?
There's like 100% reoffense rate with these type of people.
Yeah. And all of his crimes are against women, with increasing levels of violence. His criminal signature is to remove the breasts of his female victims.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Now, didn't he mutilate
Sounds like a scary
a
movie.
lot of bodies? Didn't he chop up most of his victims in some way?
Well, as of he's been convicted of 3 murders and is a prime suspect in at least 3 other murders committed in the vicinity of the Melbourne area during the 1980s and 1990s. That was just then. But July 25th, 1974, he was sentenced to 9 years imprisonment with a minimum period of 5 years for an attack on a married woman in her own home. Dupas broke into the victim's house and threatened her with a knife before tying her up with cord and raping her. He threatened to harm her baby when she resisted his attack. The sentencing judge described the offense as one of the worst rapes that could be imagined. That's intense. But also, in 1979, approximately 2 months after his release from prison, he should have never been released, again molested women in 4 separate attacks over a 10-day period. On February 28, 1980, Dupas received a 5-year minimum prison sentence for 3 charges of assault with intent to rape, malicious wounding, assault with intent to rob, and indecent assault. A 1980 report on Dupas stated, "There is little that can be said in Dupas's favor. He remains an extremely disturbed, immature, and dangerous man. His release on parole was a mistake." Now they say it was. He should have never been released in the first place.
Well, it's amazing that he was able to commit that many those early crimes and only basically got a slap on the wrist. But if you get caught with cannabis in anywhere in that country, you're going to jail for way longer.
But he was released again from prison. February. Sorry, it's funny, but like, come on, these people. February 1985, approximately 1 month later, after his release, he raped a 21-year-old woman on a beach. After alighting from his car, Dupas followed the woman and attacked her, holding her to the ground at knife point before raping her. He later told police, "I'm sorry for what happened. Everyone was telling me I'm okay now. I never thought it was going to happen again. I only wanted to live a normal life. So he's sick, like really sick. No,
I
what's
mean,
the point on
that's
letting him
hardwired
go?
sexuality. I mean, you can't
Hmm.
just erase that. I mean, that's
On
like trying to.
June,
Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say
I thought
it's
your
like
sentence was
praying the
done.
gay away. It's just like it's not. You're not going. You can't. If someone who
Mm,
gets off on that, you're not. You can't fix that. I don't know how you would.
no, it's I don't know anything that would help. You know, locking them up won't help, and then releasing them won't help. Castration, there's
That
always that.
Yeah, but I mean, castration just takes away some of the drive. I mean, a lot of those guys end up using just objects and other things.
That's scary. That like there's just not something that can help. But on June 20, like, that's why they should just be locked up and not let out. Like if there's nothing that can make them not have that urge or act on it, I guess. A lot of people can't control themselves. In his case, he can't, obviously. But on June 28th, 1985, Dubas was sentenced to 12 years imprisonment for the rape that he did on the woman that I just said, holding her to the ground at knife point. But he was released in 1992 after serving 7 years of his sentence. They just keep, for all, like, I just, what?
I mean, how sad for every single one of those victims to know that this
Mm-hmm.
guy had already. I mean, I can understand, not that understand, but the first time release, okay, fine. But you reoffend a second time, like, how is it even? I don't understand Australian Constitution or their justice over there, so maybe it's something I should read into. Maybe they've
Yeah.
got really lax laws on. Well, obviously, it sounds like it. They've got very lax laws on sexual violence.
Yeah. Well, less than 2 years after his release from prison, Dupas was arrested on charges of false imprisonment over an incident at Lake Epilock in January 1994. Wearing a hood and armed with a knife, insulation tape, and handcuffs, Dupas was followed by a woman who was picnicking and held her at knife point in a toilet block, but was chased off by her friends. As he was leaving the scene, he crashed his car and was apprehended on August 18th, 1994. After entering a guilty plea to one count of false imprisonment in the county court, Dupas was sentenced to 3 years and 9 months imprisonment with a minimum period of 2 years and 9 months. In September 1996, Dupas was again released from prison and moved into a house in Melbourne suburb. He murdered Nicole Patterson. Nicole Amanda Patterson was a 28-year-old psychotherapist and a youth counselor employed with a youth foundation, an organization formed to assist young drug users. She had desired to operate her own private practice and was using her Northcote home as an office. She placed several classified ads in a local newspaper, and 2 neighbors reported hearing the screams of a young woman coming from Patterson's house between 9 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. on the day of her murder. Attempts by Patterson's boyfriend to contact her in the afternoon failed, raising suspicions. So he was the one that went into her house and held her at knife point. And there was also Margaret Mayer. Her body was discovered under a cardboard box. That is so sad. After the guilty verdict, the family was happy to hear that he got the time that he got. So he just also murdered Mercina Halvegas. There's just a whole list of women
So he just
that
kept doing
he,
it and getting released and just doing it and getting released.
yeah. Helen McMahon also, she was a 47-year-old woman found beaten to death. It was thought Dupas was in prison at the time of McMahon's murder and was not released until 2 weeks later. However, investigators learned that Dupas was on pre-release leave from prison and living in the right area when McMahon was killed. McMahon was sunbathing topless on the beach when she was attacked. Her body was discovered naked and covered by her beach towel. The location of the murder of McMahon was nearby to the location where Dupas had earlier raped a 21-year-old woman at a beach, for which he was convicted and served a term of imprisonment. Police believe McMahon may have been Dupas' first murder victim, although her murder officially remains unsolved.
That's really sad.
Yeah, that's crazy. And as of 2006, Dupas is serving his sentences between the Maximum Security Protection Unit of Port Phillip Correctional Center and He has attempted suicide several times while in prison. Staff described him as a model prisoner while in custody and a monster whenever released. Sounds accurate. So he shouldn't be released.
I'm sorry to
I
laugh. People hearing
guess.
me laugh, I just can't do anything else but just laugh at the failed justice system sometimes.
So here's a list of his convictions. I guess July 25th, 1974. I think I said these, but I'm just going to go over them because it goes up to 2010. He was sentenced to 9 years of imprisonment, and then February 28th, 1980, committed 2 months after his release from prison, sentenced to 5 years. Then June 28th, 1985, committed 4 days after his release from prison, sentenced to 12 years of imprisonment. August 18th, 1994, sentenced to 3 years of imprisonment. August 22nd, 2000, Nicole Patterson sentenced to life imprisonment with no minimum period. Then August 16th, 2004, for murder. Margaret Mayer sentenced to life imprisonment with no minimum period. August 9th, 2007, murder. Sentenced to life imprisonment with no minimum period on 27th of August 2007, conviction set aside after successful appeal by Dupas. And then the most recent, I guess, is November 19th, 2010 for murder from Christina, sentenced to life imprisonment with no minimum period on November 26th, sorry. So, and he's still alive in prison.
No, he's in there for life now, though. Finally, right after
Yes.
that giant list of release dates.
Yes. Freaking Peter and Richard just look like the ordinary guys that would be like your typical neighbor, like Drew was saying earlier. And they just have a huge criminal history of doing the same thing but always getting let out. I just hope that we get more punishment for sexual predators. Hashtag more punishment for sexual predators, guys.
Yeah, I want to see that actually. That's some real shit.
We definitely need it. If you're listening this far, let's see that. But let's end it here. We love y'all. Thank you for listening, commenting, liking, and subscribing. I appreciate y'all. Until next time, Banana Cats.
Much love. Peace.